Welcome to the Unmuted Podcast. My name is Jeff. I'm the host of the podcast, also the founder of ScaleHR and SocialHRCamp, where we work with emerging HR tech startups, SMBs, mid-market companies on their brand awareness and lead generation activities. But this podcast here is all about HR tech, world of work, leadership, AI, whatever touches people. This episode today is the third and final episode in a three-part series with the Schulich Venture Academy. And so the first two episodes were with Cherry Rose Tan. The first episode was really focused on the problem and landscape, why leadership in tech can't stay the same. So I'll drop that link in the summary below. So that was the first episode with Cherry Rose. The second episode also with Cherry Rose was about the solution. So we talked about the problem, why leadership has to change. The second episode, which we launched, and I'll once again put the link down below, is about the solution, building the modern scale-up leader. Now, this is the third and final one with Jenny DeForno, who is also part of the Schulich Venture Academy organization. And we're going to focus this one on outcomes. So what transformation in practice actually looks like, because as we all know, it's really easy to talk about the problem. It's easy to talk about a theoretical model or what we want to do, but it's really hard to talk about what we did. So that's what we're going to do here today. So once again, Unmuted Podcast lives on our website, GoScaleHR.com. I have a brand new website coming. Yes, I know I've been saying that for a while, but it's coming very, very soon, and also on YouTube as well. So just hit the bell button, so then you get a notification. Drop your comment, want to hear from you. So once again, this is the third episode of a three-part series with SVA, which is Schulich Venture Academy. And it is about the outcome, transformation in practice, what scale-up leadership done differently looks like in action. So I want to bring in our guest, Jenny DeForno, who I've known for a long time. And I had to coerce her to do this. But Jenny, I just want to welcome you to.
Jeff, thanks so much. I can't believe we're finally getting this done.
Yeah, it only took about 9 years, but okay. Good to have you. So maybe before we dive into our topic, give our audience a bit of an overview of your background, what you do.
Awesome. Okay, so I am the Chief People Officer at TouchBistro, which is a restaurant tech scale-up here based in Toronto. And I have spent almost 25 years in the tech startup scale-up world. Gosh, I hate to hear that word, 25 years, but it might be creeping closer to 30, but that's just between you and I. And I've kind of been everywhere on that map. So when I say startup, I've been in founder-led startups where it's just me and the CEO for the first year and a half, right? We raised seed, we did Series A, we did debt financing, we acquired a company, spent 7 years, building a company right from the ground up. So I've had that experience on one hand. And on the other hand, I've been in larger organizations and scale-ups, fast-growing startups, where we, doubled our number in 18 months in terms of employees and expanded into net new markets and released new products to, companies that were 1,500 people plus. And so I've really sort of run the full gamut. And then prior to joining TouchBistro, I was at Omer's Ventures for about 4 years and I did two things primarily there. One, assess founders and founding teams for investment purposes so that the investors on the team could have a sense of the strength of the teams that they were backing. And on the other hand, once they became a portfolio company, and there was 90 plus portfolio companies around the world, so in Silicon Valley, in the UK, in Germany, and Singapore, all of those fun things, became their resource for all things talent, people, culture, etc. And so, real opportunity, not just to have my own individual experience, but now to be able to kind of see the pattern recognition, across geos, across business types, SMB, direct to consumer, whatever the case might be. And now I've had the unique privilege of being part of the Schulich Venture Academy. And in particular, I was charged with designing and then delivering a course on venture talent and leadership and what that sort of looks like today. And so that's kind of, I think, why I'm talking to you today.
Yeah, I actually you have to say that your career has been pretty cool, and I don't think you actually know this. So when did you start with Omers?
Oh God, I am really bad with dates. So I've
Like
been,
prior to COVID.
yeah, just before COVID hit. So I
Okay.
joined in that fall, and then COVID hit by that March of the subsequent year.
So I don't know if you knew this, but I actually applied for that job.
No.
Yeah, but I didn't get it. Like I didn't even get a chance to even talk to them. They said that, which is fine, totally cool, because it probably wouldn't have been not the right one for me. But then
Okay.
when I heard that they hired you, I'm like, yeah, that's a better hire.
Oh, okay. Well, that's the sweetest thing. But I never knew that.
So, before I ask the first question, I just want to just talk about two key points just to frame this conversation.
Sure.
And so, once again, we're talking about transformation in practice. So, what does scale up, leadership done differently look like? And so, I think one thing that I kind of pointed out, but I'll just say it again, is it's one thing to talk about the challenges, solution, but
Mhm.
what really matters is how these ideas and thoughts, play out in practice. Because obviously, doing something is really difficult. As you know, I don't do HR anymore, but in my career, I've done it for over 20 years. Nothing turns out the way that you plan
No.
for, right? Yeah, I know. I mean, if you could like snap your finger, that's why people ask me, yeah, so what's the best practice? I'm like, best practice. It's what
Mm.
works for you, right? Like there's no silver bullet to anything.
Do you know what? One of my favorite sayings is, and I think I coined it, but I don't know. So nobody come at me with, I said that first, but I'd never heard it before. And that is, I don't believe in best practices. I believe in right practices. Right. And so this whole notion of searching for, oh, what does the best practice look like? No, there's just the right practice for your organization. Right. So throw at the idea that there is
Yeah.
some magical bullet, like just throw it out. Doesn't exist. I haven't found it in 25 years. So I don't expect to find it in the last inning.
Well, I think the purpose, behind the whole idea of best practices is that you can learn something and then kind of have a foundation to start from, right? And so that's what I've always told people. Look, yeah, I mean, TouchBistro, like you did A, B, and C, and work for your company because of these reasons, and so people can actually learn from that. But then they have to, kind of take that and say, well, this part doesn't make sense for us, so that part we need to change that
Yes.
and make
Which
it
is
so.
what gets you to the right practice. So throw out the best practice, like don't hold it up as this panacea. Take what you can, take what serves you, take what's relevant, and then figure out a way that it actually impacts the business. Because
Yeah.
that's the only thing that matters at the end of the day.
Yeah. So let's dive into it. And so obviously we're going to focus on, some real world stories of transformation here. So first question for you is, as a leader who has traversed the corporate VC scale up landscape, can you share how you have transformed your leadership approach over the last few years?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Look, I think what's really changed for me is like, you get into this first leadership role, like the first time you kind of step into being ahead of anything. And I don't know how other people feel, but certainly for me, I felt like I always had to be the person who had the right answer in the room, right? That
Yeah.
I needed to be the person that it's all in my head and there's going to be a business issue and I need to have the answer and I got to be able to execute on it, almost immediately. Right. And I think if anything, especially the shift, coming out of the pandemic, leaner teams, all of those sorts of things, that what really shifted for me is it wasn't so much about always having the right answer, but it was about knowing how to get to the right answer. Right. Who to engage with, how to remain curious, how to fall in love with the problem and not the solution, right? So making sure you're digging in there, you're asking the questions, you're getting close to the business, that you have enough judgment and experience to be able, to sort of through the different playbooks or the different best practices and kind of use your discernment and judgment to kind of know what applies, what moves the dial, what is consistent with the values of your organization, et cetera. And so that really, I don't need to know all of the answers, but I need to be responsible for getting to the right answers that will help drive the business forward. And that's through engaging with this whole great marketplace of ideas, whether that comes from colleagues or, from continual reading. Like I read voraciously. I set time aside every single day for at least an hour to an hour and a half to make sure that I am reading business relevant things that help me tap into new ideas or new experiences, etc. And so, and then with that, like I talked about the judgment as well. And so that's like things like, what do I say? Not just the things I say yes to, but like the things I say no to, because, increasingly, so it's about that judgment, but it's also about that focus and that clarity, that what you say no to, what you lean into in terms of driving the business forward being, a real key differentiator. So I would say like that really has shifted in my practice as I have progressed in my career.
So what I'm hearing from you, Jenny, is really that you become a bit more open-minded, I guess, because I think for me, I remember when I was coming up, I always thought that I had to have all of the answers too.
Yeah.
But now we have so much information like at our fingertips, so it's much easier
Yeah.
to do the research and talk to our network. And I don't know about you, but in the last 10 years, I've really made sure that I had that close circle. Not people that, always agree with me, but
Yes.
people that would challenge me, but I could go to and bounce ideas, which is why I created a bunch of networks and stuff. Because I'm sorry, but if you think you can know everything about HR, you're smoking crack. I mean, I don't think that's possible. So.
100%. So important. So, and I think that touches on another important part, and that is the community that you create. Because, to your point, you can go out and research so much information. There's so much information at our fingertips, but it could lead you down some wrong paths too, right? Like if you don't have that discernment, and if you don't have that judgment, and or if you haven't gone out there and sort of pressure tested it a bit. So,
and given that both of us are a little bit further along in our careers, I mean, I can speak for myself. Experience matters.
oh yeah, no, 100%.
Yeah.
Like experience, it's funny because everybody tells you that so much, like when you're early in your career, and you just don't want to hear it, right? Because I'm smart, I'm talented, and I'll work hard, and all of these things, right? And then you get here and you're like, oh yeah, now I know why they said it.
Yeah. Exactly. Did you learn any lesson along the way during the last few years as you were going through this transformation? And was there one thing that kind of stuck out to you? What worked and then what didn't?
Sure, you bet. I think there's two things that I would say, one on each side. And what I would also say with this is I like to think of myself as someone who has very strongly held beliefs, but they're loosely held, right? Because I am open to always engaging with the ideas and kind of redrafting in my head what I think based on, emerging information. But these two things, like just consistently. And this comes with the pattern recognition that Omer's Ventures gave me as well. And so one is in terms of what works really well, I would say to every founder, every people leader, like focus on talent density, right? And so in terms of trajectories of organizations and changing those trajectories, focusing, whether it's early stage or later stage, focusing on those leadership roles that will help change the trajectory of the company is really super important. So every single hire, like every time you're at bat, you got to concentrate and you got to be really focused and dialed in to making sure you can get the best person. Like, okay, one hire, like, because this is also the power of compounding, right? Like one hire may not change everything tomorrow. Two hires, same thing. Three hires, you start to get momentum. 4, 5, 6, right? And so every time at bat, really focusing on that talent density in each specific role, I think it is the difference between every single amazing team and I have seen and those that don't, right? Is that focus and clarity around it. Hiring for those people who raise the bar every time. So that for me is like a real, some people are going to go, duh. And other people are going to go, gosh, right. I just don't concentrate on that enough. And so hopefully that's a tidbit out there for people. And then the secondary thing on that, which is in many aspects sort of the other side of the coin, and that is, man, when you need to cut bait on somebody, you need to cut bait, right? And so oftentimes, and by the way, this is the number one, when I was in venture, it was when you sent out surveys to founders, et cetera, what's the number one thing you regret in terms of your people practices? And the number one thing is
not getting rid of people when they should have.
Not firing people fast enough. When you have them in the wrong role, they're either, whether it's a skill thing or whether it's a cultural alignment thing. If it's either of those things that you don't have fit and signal on with that individual, they wish they had made that decision earlier, because the drag you get on the business, the people around you, the potential damage to the culture, et cetera, just ends up being profound, and it compounds, but in a negative way. And so focus on talent density and the positives. You want to focus on the talent density. You want to double down on making sure you got the right people in the right roles who are multipliers, right? Who are people in their roles that make everyone around them better. And then on the other hand, when you've made a mistake in your hiring practices, you need to, and by the way, it's kinder for that person too, because a bad fit is a bad fit all around. And so making sure that you're making that decision to exit that person from the business in a respectful way sooner rather than later.
Definitely. Yeah, I totally agree with that. I mean, I think, people say, well, hiring can be done perfectly. No, it can't. You're still hiring human beings, right? You can go through the best process in the world and use any tool you want and, do everything correctly, but something just doesn't line up. And so I remember when I was practicing HR and I was leading HR for a startup type organization, one of the core things that I always did in my first 6 months, actually earlier, probably first 4 months, is I always said to the founder, give me your hit list. Because I knew, because there was always going to be a few people that were dragging everything down. And I knew that. And most of the founders struggled with terminating. It was really weird. And I learned that years ago. I'm like, really? To me, it was second nature because I've been doing it since, day one, right? But I remember one organization, they were so scared to terminate anyone. And so that was my awakening, because when we went through the process, I didn't just terminate them on day 2. Like, it wasn't like that at all. It was a proper thought out process, but you should see the aura in the office, because back then we actually worked in offices full time. People would come up to me crying, giving me hugs, thanking that we finally did this. And I just couldn't believe it. But I realized why.
Yeah. The process has to be respectful, has to be thoughtful. You have to give people appropriate chances, etc. But once then I think the kindest thing for everybody involved is to admit when it's not working and make decisions fast.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, shifting gears here, let's talk about Schulich Venture Academy. So as an educator, because you are an esteemed professor and educator and teacher, how have you seen SVA's approach, more of the experiential design, peer-to-peer learning, practical capstones, all of that, impact the leaders in your programs and classrooms?
Yeah, so first of all, I need to start by saying that Chris Carter, who was the first person to sort of come up with the idea, and then Cherry Rose and Shivam have just run with it and just built something really, truly special. But when he came to me, I had just joined Omer's Ventures with it, and he had this idea. And I remember thinking, I was so drawn to it because this is exactly what I would have wanted when I was first building all those years ago, right?
Oh, for sure.
Like all the mistakes that could have been saved in the process, like all the bumps and bruises that I acquired along the way, and just feeling a little less alone, right? I often tell the story that I know what it's like to be in a startup, and there are days that you're in the office and you're walking out and you're going, we are the smartest people on the planet. Like, we have figured this out. This is a rocket ship, high fives all around. You're on cloud 9. And then literally, and I'm not even joking, fact, this is an absolute truth, sitting in my car and crying for 10 minutes before I drive home because I'm sure I'm over my skis. I don't know what I'm doing. I've bankrupted the company, and I've probably bankrupted my family as well, right? Yeah. So I know what that feels like. And so this program, to be able to create that level of community and learning together, to support these wonderful founders and startup leaders, I just think is just phenomenal. So that's what sort of drew me to it in the beginning. But why I love the program is because it really, it sort of turns the traditional learning model on its head. And it's not textbook, it's not old school, it's not by some professor who's been teaching it for 25 plus years and is long gone in terms of their practical hands-on application. It is really for founders and by founders and startup leaders, for founders and startup leaders. And so it's really vested in real time, real challenges that businesses are facing day to day. And so over the 6 weeks, every week, the goal is, in the time that we come together, is we're talking about topics and practical actionable tips that the very next day they can walk out and start to implement in their business if it resonates for them and it feels like it is suitable, right? And so that real practicality to it, so that it's not like I need to sit and digest this for a couple of weeks and then sort of craft my own way out of this. There is like, real sort of immediate things that can be actioned. The other thing is that it's not just about me being the teacher in the classroom. It is this community that's created of all of these people who are doing much more fantastic things than I have ever done in my career, and these fantastic leaders, and learning from each other and pressure testing their ideas, their thoughts, and their experiences with this community. And it's the community in the classroom from a learning perspective, but it's also the community they carry forward with them after the class, right?
Yeah.
Now they've got, where maybe they didn't have before, but now they've got the phone a friend, right? I'm experiencing this. Who else has gone through this issue, etc. And then, finally we wrap it up with a capstone project. And that capstone project is like, it's a real takeaway. Like I don't assign it to just assign something. It is like, here's a project that if you invest the time in, it is focused on an outcome for your specific business. And if you do the work, I will give you actual feedback on it that helps give you more to think about in terms of its application. So it is real world, it is practical, it is tactical, it creates community, and it changes, one course to the next, because we are dealing and working through the issues that are front and foremost for these business leaders every day.
I absolutely love that, because I've always been a huge believer that to change how you do something through learning, there needs to be a heavy emphasis on actual adoption. So it's not just sort of soaking in whatever it is that the person is teaching you, or maybe you're doing group work together, but it's after you leave, right? Or drawn out, right? And I always, like the old saying, well, the stuff you learn just gets shoved in a drawer, and then you go back to your job, and then everything just goes back to how it was. And so you just wasted money that way. So that's why I really like this approach, and then great to hear that it get done well, like in terms of the cohorts that have gone through it a little bit. So for listeners who want to start to rethink their own leadership approach, what are 2 to 3 practical steps that they can take right now?
That's a great question. And it's funny because I've thought about this because I got 10, so I'm trying to figure out the ones. So look, I'm just going to talk about 3 things that are, I guess, top of mind for me right now. And so I'll share them because I'm working through them as we speak. And so one is getting a little bit more ruthless about focus, right? And so I just think that businesses are changing so quickly, markets are changing so quickly, technology is changing so quickly, and sort of in this sort of shifting landscape, it is really easy to go down rabbit holes. It's really easy to all of a sudden get through a day and kind of go, oh, at the end of the day, like, what is it really that I did that sort of moved the dial? And so I have gotten much more disciplined about having real ruthless focus on the meetings that I will accept and not accept, and really tying everything back to what is our goal, right? Like, what is our goal? How does this serve our goal? Is this worthy of my time? And I have to answer yes to all 3 of those to actually make sure that I'll invest the time that's needed, whether it's a meeting, whether it's work, whether it's research, etc. So like I have a saying that my whole team can probably recite, and that is, with everything we do or take on, I want you to ask yourself, so what? Right? So what? We do this, and so what? Like, what changes? What's better? What will be the business outcome? And if you can't come to me with an answer to that, so what, it probably doesn't get our time. And so just being a little bit more ruthless and focused and bringing clarity to the work that we do and making sure it's driving results. So that's probably number 1. And the second thing is also, where we do decide to lean in, is getting closer to the work ourselves, right? And so again, sometimes in HR practices, you'll see teams sit back, collect some information and some data points, synthesize it before they kind of go back out with some decisions or some recommendations. What I am trying to, for myself and for my team, is I want to be directly embedded in the business, right? The closer we are to the business and business outcomes, and that's everything from, hey, you're recruiting for our sales team. I want you to at least spend 5 to 10 hours a week on sales calls with them, right? Really understanding what that Like, what does a good call look like? What does, so that when we're looking for the people who will thrive and excel in that environment, what does that look like? Same with customer service calls, etc. So making sure that we're getting closer to the business, because all of this information sometimes creates a bit of a barrier, and HR teams sort of receive back into that and make decisions from far. And I want us to make decisions closer to the business. So the second thing, and then the last thing is maybe just a hack that I am trying out right now as well. And that is, so these are the things that we do for the business, but there's also the things that as people leaders we need to do for our team, or for any leader that we need to do for our teams. And so I, in a recent survey, have gone out to ask my team, what is one thing I could do differently that would make your work easier? What's one thing? Like, just give me one thing that I can do to make your work easier, right?
What's funny about that? What's not funny, but I remember leading HR teams and we're so focused on the business, right? And then, but I had to tell myself, wait a minute, I have a small team here and I'm totally ignoring them. You know what I mean? Could just so focus. But then I have to tell myself, wait a minute, HR is a business function, so I also have to include them too, right? So it's kind of funny how that sometimes works out. So I agree with that. Oh, that's a good one. All right, so let's get to our my last question. That what I ask everybody: if our viewers can learn just one thing about what we have talked about today, what is that one thing? Just one thing.
And it's also, there's a plug for the SVA as well. Look, leadership isn't static, and the playbook that got you here won't get you there, right? And so the best leaders, 100%, are the ones that are willing to learn, unlearn, adapt, stay curious, dig in, are willing to fail, right? And so this notion of, like, it's not the leader I am today is not the leader I want to be a week from now, is not the leader I want to be 3 months from now, is not the leader I want to be, 6 months from now, right? If I am not leaning into the change of our world and making sure that I'm constantly out there learning, adapting, changing, challenging, all of those things, then the reality is I, as a professional, am not going to grow. My team's not going to grow. And certainly my ability to contribute, or my team's ability to contribute to the business and the business success, is not going to be.
There's a fantastic book called Mindset by Dr. Carol Dweck.
Yeah.
It is probably hands down my favorite book of all time. I've actually read it twice. I don't read a lot because I read slowly, but I have read it twice, so my nephew makes fun of me. But yeah, so that's a really good book about open mindset versus a fixed mindset. And honestly, I think that's the key to life. I mean, that's just my opinion. But okay, so big shout out to Schulich Venture Academy, because they were the main sponsor for our HR in Tech crawl during Toronto Tech Week. Jenny also spoke at that. We just got an announcement. Toronto Tech Week is happening the last week of May. They just announced it today.
I haven't even seen.
Yeah. It just came out today. So John Hillis and I have started planning for that, which is great. Second HR and Tech crawl, hopefully Schulich Venture Academy will be a part of it. But they were our main sponsor for that, and I just want to give them a shout out. Cherry Rose Tan, obviously Jenny, and then a bunch of the others, Chris Carter, Shivam, and all of the others. Thank you very much. And I'm a huge, advocate of the program. So anyway, Jenny, thank you for being here. This is the Unmuted Podcast. I'm Jeff, the host. Please message me anytime. Drop your comments here. Want to hear from you. Challenge what I had to say, what Jenny had to say. Do it nicely. So this podcast lives on our website at GoScaleHR.com and on YouTube as well. So Jenny, thanks for being here.
Oh, Jeff, thanks so much for having me. I'm so glad we finally made this work after 9 years.